Brian Laundrie's parents do not want to be asked certain questions at their upcoming deposition. And how do I know that? Because they just filed a motion with the court requesting a protective order. In other words, asking the court to determine what questions they cannot be asked at their depositions coming up on December 1st. So hi there, I'm Michele Hagan. I'm a legal analyst and a former prosecutor and a former domestic violence prosecutor. So we're going to take a look at the motion they filed, and I'm going to show you a couple things in that motion that I think are very interesting and very telling, and in fact, areas that you might want to be asking questions about. So please do hit that like button. Share these videos, support this channel by subscribing, and thank you to all of those of you who have subscribed and to continue to support my work. So, the video is for education and information, and again, please do leave a comment because I want to know what your analysis is, because this video is simply my opinion. So, in case you popped onto this channel, let me give you a little bit of background. Gabby Petito was tragically killed by her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie. In September, approximately September of 2021, her body was found in the Grand Teton National Park. Brian Laundrie, her boyfriend, confessed to murdering her. And during the time that they were looking for Gabby Petito, Brian had returned home to his parents' house in Florida. Gabby Petito's parents were reaching out to Brian's parents and saying, "Where is she? Help us find our daughter." The Laundries did not respond, and Gabby's parents claim that the Laundries should have provided them information about the whereabouts, and that statement that they issued through their attorney, which the judge found to be a statement on behalf of the Laundries. In that statement, the Laundries indicated that they hope that basically the search is successful in finding their daughter, Gabby Petito. And Gabby's parents claim that at that point, the Laundries knew what had happened to their daughter and their whereabouts, and they were withholding information, which caused them emotional distress. Therefore, they are suing Brian Laundrie's parents for emotional distress. Okay, so the depositions of the Laundries are scheduled for December 1st. So the Laundries just filed this request for a protective order. In other words, to get the judge to determine what questions can be asked and what questions can't be asked. In other words, to prohibit plaintiff's counsel, the attorney representing Gabby's parents, from asking the Laundries these questions during the deposition. And why is that? I will show you why. So let's go ahead and take a look at the motion, and I'm going to point out some areas that I find interesting, and I'm sure you're going to find some other areas that are interesting, so please put that in the comments section. Okay, so let's take a look at this motion that was just filed by Brian Laundrie's parents, so they will not be asked certain questions. All right, so it was filed October 27th, so a couple days ago. This is the case: Joseph Petito, Gabby Petito's father, Nichole Schmidt, Gabby Petito's mother, against Brian Laundrie and Roberta Laundrie, Brian Laundrie's parents. So, defendants Christopher and Roberta Laundrie move for a protective order to limit the scope of their deposition to subject matters relevant to the cause of action, which is they can ask for that. So the court has the discretion of whether or not to grant these protective orders. In other words, to tell plaintiff's counsel you can't ask questions about this certain area, okay? So motion for protective order is the proper method for restricting or denying a deposition. So they're going to be restricting or denying counsel from asking certain questions. Upon a good cause shown by the defendants, in this case the Laundries, And the Laundries are saying that being certain areas that may be asked of them in the deposition will cause them annoyance, embarrassment, oppression, or undue burden or expense. So that's the test. The judge can grant the protective order if it annoys, embarrasses, oppresses, or undue burden or expense on the Laundries. The court may, under paragraph 3, the court may order that certain matters not be inquired into or that the scope of the discovery be limited to certain matters. So here they're just talking about the deposition. They're trying to restrict plaintiff's counsel from asking them certain questions that they find embarrassing, annoying, etc. And here's the other reason, paragraph 6, very interesting. The public who followed the case and the plaintiffs are likely curious about Brian Laundrie's life, his last days, his interaction with his parents, and the thoughts and feelings experienced by his parents. But curiosity is not a reason to require the defendants to discuss such personal and heart-wrenching details. Rather, the discovery must be relevant to the cause of action at issue. Okay, that's what the defense is saying. But in the lawsuit, I thought, and I underlined, his interaction with his parents, I think, is relevant and can be argued relevant because what happened when he came home driving Gabby's van without Gabby? What kind of interactions did he have with his parents? What was the conversation? Because in the lawsuit, and I'm reading from the complaint in the intentional infliction of emotional distress lawsuit that Gabby's parents have filed against Brian's parents, it's an action for damages exceeding $30,000. And there's several allegations in this complaint, some of which is that Brian had sent text messages back and forth, that he arrived home at his parents' house, that it's believed that on August 28th, approximately when he arrived home, he advised his parents that he had murdered Gabby Petito. And on that same date, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, Brian's parents, spoke with attorney Steve Bernalino. On August 30th, Brian sent a text to Gabby's mother, Nichole Schmidt, stating that there was no service in Yosemite Park in an effort to deceive Gabby's mother into believing that Gabby was still alive. On September 1st, Brian Laundrie returned to the home of his parents, driving Gabby's van. After this point in time, so after September 1st, there was no contact between the parents. From August 27th to September 19th, Gabby Petito's remains were found approximately September 19th in Wyoming at the Grand Teton National Park. Plaintiffs were extremely distraught and were attempting to locate Gabby Petito. While Gabby Petito's family was suffering, the Laundries went on a family vacation at DeSoto Park September 6th and 7th. In an effort to avoid any contact with Nichole Schmidt on or about September 10th, Roberta Laundrie blocked Nichole Schmidt on her cell phone from receiving any calls or any texts. On September 14th, with full knowledge that Gabby Petito had been murdered by their son, Christopher Laundrie and Roberta Laundrie, through their lawyer, issued the following statement. And this is the statement that the judge found that was made on behalf of the Laundries, because he has to assume everything in the complaint is true in order to deny the motion to dismiss, okay? So the statement was made by the attorney on behalf of the Laundries, apparently. It is our understanding that a search has been organized for Miss Petito in or near Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming on behalf of the Laundrie family. It is our hope that the search for Miss Petito is successful and that Miss Petito is reunited with her family. And what Gabby's parents are claiming is that statement misled them, deceived them, and in fact was a lie that caused them all of this, caused them emotional distress, therefore they should be compensated. And then on September 16th, the attorney representing Gabby's parents issued a letter basically begging Brian's parents to provide them with information. We are writing this letter to ask you to help find our beautiful daughter. We understand you are going through a difficult time, and I'm sure it was a difficult time, and your instinct is to protect your son is strong. We ask you to put yourselves in our shoes. We haven't been able to sleep or eat, and our lives are falling apart. We believe you know the location where Brian left Gabby. We beg you to tell us. And then it goes on. It says, Gabby lived with you for over a year. Tell us if we are even looking in the right place. All we want is Gabby to come home. Please help us make it happen. Those are the allegations that they are claiming in their lawsuit. Okay. So when they say things like they don't want to be asked about interaction with his parents, I think that's definitely relevant to the complaint. So let's go on here. So you can go ahead and read this paragraph 7, the elements of intentional infliction. And here's what the Laundries want the judge to limit the deposition to. As a result, the focus of discovery should be limited to the scope of time period between August 27th to September 19th, the time between the death of Miss Petito and when her body was found, and further limited the information related to the outward actions and comments of the defendants during the period. So they want the court to limit it to the time period between they were looking for Gabby and when her body was found, and also only as to the action and comments of the defendants. Well, my question is, what about the actions and comments of Brian Laundrie? Anyway, number 10, defendants do not seek to limit the deposition around the attorney statement on September 14th, which is what the judge found as affirmative conduct or speech on behalf of the Laundries. However, the defendants expect the plaintiffs to inquire into the history and private experiences of the Laundrie for purposes other than providing intentional. So they're concerned, they don't want the plaintiffs to be inquiring about the history or private experiences of the Laundrie family. Well, isn't it relevant as to what the experience is with their son, Brian Laundrie, and Gabby Petito, if she was living with the Laundries for over a year? What was going on in the relationship with Brian and Gabby? And here's the very interesting point. The only purposes for such questions would serve are to embarrass, so asking about the private experiences, what was going on in the Laundrie family. Those purposes of those questions would serve only to embarrass, annoy, oppress, or burden the defendants by having them discuss painful details of Brian Laundrie's history and the last days and their personal experiences and grief before and after these tragic events. Okay, all right. My question is, what is Brian Laundrie's history? History for what? Is it his history for violence? Is it his history for having fights with Gabby Petito? Did they see any injuries on Gabby? She was killed at the hands of her boyfriend. Was there any prior acts of domestic violence between them? Was Brian violent? Was he a violent sort of person? Was there violence? Did they see violence between Gabby and Brian? They don't want to get into Brian's history? History for what? And their personal experiences and grief before and after these tragic events. They don't want plaintiff's counsel to be talking about Brian, asking about Brian's history, whatever that is. They don't want plaintiff's counsel to ask him in the deposition about grief before. Why is there grief? What grief are they talking about? I understand grief after the tragic events, but what is the grief before the tragic events? What is that about? And these are areas I would be inquiring. In fact, they've kind of put the cards on the table here. And keep in mind, the reason they're bringing this protective order motion to the judge is because the parties tried to resolve this. And the counsel representing the Laundries wasn't able to resolve it. In other words, to say to the plaintiff's counsel, we're going to object. We don't want you asking questions about this and this. And the plaintiff's counsel said, no, I'm not going to agree to that. And frankly, I think this is fair. Fair inquiry to be asked about Brian's history about what? And their experiences with Brian. And what was this grief before the tragic events? You know, it's a terrible, terrible tragedy for both families, okay? They both lost their children. But a deposition is a pursuit to find out the truth here. They're trying to gather information to support their allegations. You know, what did the Laundries know? Did they, you know, could the potential be here? Well, let's just say that, let's assume, let's just guess here that this Brian Laundrie's history relates to some kind of history for violence or fighting with Gabby. Well, if the Laundries knew that, does that make them a possibility of being sued for wrongful death of Gabby Petito? Not Brian's estate. We talked about that already. But Brian, you know, Gabby, the Laundries being sued. What did they know about Brian's history and why were they grieving? What was that about? Is it the grief because of the breakup between the relationship between Brian and Gabby? I mean, the engagement, maybe. I think maybe the engagement was off the table, even though they went on their trip. I don't know. Very interesting, and very telling in here. So the other thing is, you know, maybe someone could argue, or maybe they could be prosecuted for aiding and abetting if they knew that there was stuff going on. And again, this is a leap. I'm taking a leap here, and it's just, you know, a guess. All right. So very interesting hearing coming up, and it's going to be on September 22nd. The judge is going to make a decision as to whether or not to grant this protective order. But let me point something out to you too that also gives me a clue that this hearing might not be very long. But let me just walk you through the rest of this. Here's the details of their personal lives that don't relate to the attorney statement. Again, they want to limit the inquiry. But the test is whether or not these questions would be relevant and whether or not they would be reasonably calculated to lead to discovery of admissible evidence. Bottom line is most of the time the judges really are reluctant to grant protective orders. They may do it around medical conditions or sensitive financial documents, trade secrets, tax returns, that kind of stuff. But in this area, I don't think so. I think this is going to be a difficult burden for the Laundries to meet. So I'm just going to roll through this so you can read the rest of it if you choose to. Talks about how the parties were unable to resolve it. That's why the Laundries filed this motion. Okay, so the hearing. The judge, this hearing is going to be ordered to be heard regarding this protective motion. It's going to take place on November 22nd. But look at the time reserved, 15 minutes. So to me, that doesn't sound like there's going to be much argument here, that the court's going to be allowing each side to argue. The court's probably going to be making their decision. The judge will make their decisions based on this motion and the response that I'm sure the Gabby's parents will be filing. But a 15-minute to me could be that the judge says, you know what, go through the deposition, make your objections at the time the questions are asked. And if the plaintiff's counsel wants the answers to those questions, they can file a motion to compel to requiring the Laundries to answer those questions. Or the judge can just outright grant this protective order and restrict the questioning to areas outside of talking about Brian's history and their personal experiences with Brian. Okay, and by the way, this is going to be a Zoom hearing. So here's the information. It's open to the public, although you cannot record or screenshot any of this hearing. So that's out there for you. You can take a look at that. Okay, so to sum up, the judge has to decide on November 22nd whether or not to grant this protective order to restrict the attorney representing Patrick Riley, who represents Gabby's parents, from asking the Laundries any questions in their depositions. And their depositions are going to be separate. I think Christopher Laundrie goes first, followed by Roberta Laundrie. They're going to be asked a series of questions. The attorney representing the Laundries will be present in the deposition. It'll be recorded, right? They'll have a transcriber there, court reporter there to take down the questions and the answers. And each question, the defendant, the Laundries have an opportunity to answer it or not. And also the counsel can make objections. The counsel can object the question's irrelevant, or that it's subject to the protective order, or that they have other objections they can make during the deposition. And as I said earlier, and if the plaintiff counsel feels that the Laundrie should have answered that question, they can make a motion to compel to require the Laundries to answer that question. Okay? So we'll see what happens. And again, this video is just my opinion. So what's your analysis? Do you think that's interesting? Are you curious about what are they talking about? Brian's history for what? They were grieving before the events over what? What was going on? Makes me very curious. So we'll see what the response is that I'm sure will be filed by the Gabby's parents to ask the court to deny the protective order. So stay tuned. The hearing comes up on the 22nd. In the meantime, please do hit that like button, share these videos, subscribe to this channel, support my work by subscribing. Again, thank you to all of those who have subscribed. Welcome to the new subscribers. And please do leave a comment or question. I want to know what your analysis is. Okay, thanks for watching.